Welcome to another episode of the Keyspire Investor Summit Speaker Series, where we get to know our speakers before we see them at the summit on September 27, 28, 29. Today I've got Stephen Libman with me. Stephen and Scott and I have been doing training and speaking together for over a decade now, so I know you're in for a treat when you come see Stephen speak. He's going to be on the workshop stage at the Investor Summit. We're going to be sending you the agenda, the schedule a little bit closer to the event as a ticket holder. Now, if you're watching this and you don't have a ticket yet, make sure you go and get your ticket right now. KeyspireInvestorSummit.com while they're still available. We have thousands and thousands of tickets have been claimed so far, and we have a limited space. Even though it's one of the biggest venues in the country, there's still only so much space. This thing is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. Let me tell you about Stephen, who we're going to talk to today for a few minutes. Stephen's expertise is in real estate, and he's really wanted to focus on talking about money and helping us understand talking about money. He has learned that we've been led to believe that money is a dirty word. That's just big business trying to keep us in the dark. He shows people how to look out for themselves and generate the results to match. His mission is to shatter the illusions about money in order to break its hold on people so that they can have more today. Stephen, thank you for being here today for our short time just to talk about the summit and your session.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you, Michael. Thanks.
It's going to be good. So I've seen you speak many times. I know people are in for a treat, but I want to, I don't want to start with a real estate question. I want to talk about this idea of shattering the illusion about money, because I think you're probably the foremost money expert that we're going to have at the summit and on this series. Everyone's talking more about real estate. What are these illusions about money that people have? Maybe they don't even know they have them. And what are they?
Yeah, so that's such a loaded, because there's so many of them. We've been conditioned to believe a certain set of rules. And when we live within those rules, we don't realize that there's something beyond that. So a concrete example is, what's the number one thing that people are afraid of when they invest today? And that has to be losing money. I think that's the obvious one. It's like, I'm afraid if I mess it up, I'm going to lose money. What they're not realizing is, by not investing, the very thing that they're worried about happening is already happening. Because if you had $100,000 sitting in a savings account, or worse, a checking account, or an account that just wasn't making you much money, between the taxes on what small gain you might get of a couple of percent, plus the inflation impact today, which is a real number, like that's not what it was a number of years ago, so small, but today it's a real number. So your 100K next year is worth 90. The year after that is worth 80. So the very thing you're worried about is already happening because you're not investing. So it's a way of looking at things through the lens of not what shouldn't I be doing, but why should I be doing it? How should I be doing it in such a way that I minimize my risk, we can eliminate it, and I maximize my return? Because my mantra is money moves or it dies. If it sits around doing nothing, it's going to perish.
Yeah, it's a funny conversation about cash, and that comes up a lot within the Keyspire community, Stephen, as I'm sure you talk to many of our members and people that have come to our boot camp. A lot of them will have cash and cash sitting around, and cash makes people feel comfortable. And, when people talk to me about it, I say, well, there's only one guaranteed investment on the planet. It's cash, and it's guaranteed to lose you money every year. It is really the only guaranteed investment. Nothing else is guaranteed. They say, oh, is this real estate investment guaranteed? I said, of course not. But cash is. It'll lose you 2 to 7% every single year for the rest of your life, unless you're in deflation, which you got more issues to worry about. So I love that you point that out. That's like one of the top illusions of money. I come from a European immigrant family where cash is king, and everything was paid for in cash, and we keep cash around. I don't, but that's an illusion that I'm very familiar with. So thank you for that. Are you going to be talking about this at the summit? What are you going to be talking about?
Yes, as a matter of fact, what's really interesting, I always talk about money before I talk about investing, because we have to have a different relationship with money. A lot of our relationships, mine included, I didn't grow up with this thinking process. I had to evolve through a lot of the mistakes that so many of us have to evolve through. And on the other side of that is a great opportunity that most of us don't recognize. So I definitely will be talking about money, but I'm going to elevate that conversation, of course, into real estate, because real estate, without a doubt, is probably the most powerful place and greatest equalizer for all people to be able to invest. You don't need your own money, as we know, to invest. If you have your own money, you certainly can use it. And while money is needed, it doesn't have to be yours. So it is that equalizer. But I'm going to be talking very specifically about retirement accounts. I'm
Hmm.
not retiring someday in the future. I'm 25 years old. I'm not retiring for 40 years. Everybody has to think about retirement in terms of 10 to 20 years. No matter where you're starting, you have to think about, I need more money going out without me having to work so hard for it. And how can I take advantage of the current vehicles that are in place? For example, our retirement savings accounts, whether they're tax free, whether they're registered, non registered, and all the things that go with it. You know, Michael, a lot of people, they don't realize that they could be using their educational savings accounts incorrectly. They don't realize that there's such a thing called a health spending account or a health savings account that they can actually invest in real estate. And they don't realize that even their registered retirement accounts, they can actually get phenomenal rates of return that they're not used to getting, probably more secured than leaving their money in the money market, and certainly just playing the stock market without any other understanding. So yeah, we're going to couple together the ideas of money and the ideas of how to use that with looking towards the future.
I think that's really important for everyone to take away is to understand learning about money before we learn about investing. That's a really important point. And I'm thinking of the analogy because my brain is like an analogy machine. It's like if you were to start investing without learning about money, it would be like working out heavy before stretching, right? Learning about money is like the stretching. It's preparing your body. It's preparing your portfolio to do well when you start investing. And I think you're the only speaker that's digging into money like this. So you're a must see on the workshop stage. You got to go see Stephen at the workshop stage to learn about money. Get that stretching in so that when you do all the investing over the course of the weekend, then your muscles are ready, your brain is ready to go. So I just absolutely love that. And you're going to focus on the retirement the retirement element. You know, with the stretching analogy, it's even more important that we stretch as we get older. And so as we get older investing, it's even more important that we have our mindset with money correct before we get investing. So I just love the idea of investing stretching, I'm going to call it. Uh, Retirement mistakes. You hit on those a little bit. What are some of the retirement mistakes that people make that either they know they make and they walk into it, but they have no choice, they don't change, or some mistakes that people might not even know they're making until it's too late?
Yeah, you know, the first thing starts with not investing. So that's the first mistake because interestingly enough, most people still do not invest. They have their money in a bank. And we're never going to get rich with our money. We're never going to save ourselves to wealth. I think that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
evident. And even at 10% per year, with inflation being where it is, we've got to do better. And people say to me all the time, but I'm used to getting 5, 6, 7% in the stock market. My answer to that is you can certainly do better in the stock market, but it would require a lot of education and application and having the right support to get you there. Real estate is a lot more forgiving and it's not so volatile in a moment to moment. So when people think about, well, where should I put my money? I think one of the biggest mistakes is they don't think about real estate as they think about the stock market. The stock market is I can go online, press a few buttons, drop $3,000, and I'm invested. Real estate takes a little bit more effort, but the stability is so much better. So people don't really think about, as you and I often talk about, this thing you call total portfolio management. They don't think about where everything drops. I'm okay with people having precious metals and having even
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrencies. I'm totally fine with that as long as they're trained and supported. But real estate is where the stability lies. So I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes is number one, not being invested at all. And number two, not finding a way to put real estate in your portfolio.
I agree, and I've been spending the last like decade trying to figure this one thing out. And I know I got a good idea of what's going on after coaching thousands of investors, but maybe you can help me as well here. I like to ask everybody. I don't think I've asked you this before. Is why do you think people are so attracted to the stock market versus the real estate market? It's like it's the default, right? It's like, oh, I'm saving, I got some extra money, I'm going to put it in the market, the stock market, in the public markets. We call it at Keyspire. Why is that so attractive to people when they know it's volatile? It's going to go up and down. Every day, you never know what you're going to get. They know that the return barely beats inflation unless you're going into something super aggressive. Um, why do people still do it? I don't understand. Do you know why?
Well, I don't have a definitive reason. I have anecdotal reasons. What I've seen also from having coached and trained and worked with thousands of people over the years is a couple of things. One is it's easy. You can actually, you don't call it this, but you're giving up responsibility to somebody else. So when people invest in the stock market, most people, they don't even directly invest in the stock market. What do? They go to a mutual fund advisor, or they go to a stockbroker or that type of financial advisor, and they say, what should I do? And they do this risk analysis, which is usually a handful of questions, which doesn't tell you that much. And
Mm-hmm.
then they put them in either A, B, or C, and it's already predefined. And it's so easy, and it's easy when things are going wrong to not put your head in the sand. When things are going well, to think you're making money, and to call your broker and say, what should I do? And the broker's usual answer is, let's stay the course, or let's make these minor adjustments. It just seems to be easy, and you can actually abdicate that responsibility to somebody else. Whereas in real estate, yes, technically you can do the same thing. You could buy a public REIT, but the problem with a public REIT, real estate investment trust, is that they're also affected by the movement of the stock market. But if you just shift your thinking 1 degree from public REIT to private REIT, the private REIT is not impacted by the movement of the stock market. The private REIT, which you can still possibly be eligible for, enables you to be a true partner in whatever it is that you're investing in. So I just think it's easier. It's a little bit sexy, I have to say. Real estate is not that exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you're a hands-on flipper or something like that, but most people are kind of hands-off. I just don't. I think the stock market is just alluring, and there's a lot of hype. We hear about it every day. The Dow Jones is this, that, and to be honest, Michael, nobody invests in the Dow Jones. It's 30 stocks that only very wealthy people put their money in. Most people put it in the S&P 500, so that's 500 stocks instead of 30. So they just don't really. I guess it's just one thing to do or not to do, and they want to get it off their plate. I have to say this though: once they see what, for example, Keyspire in its training and what I show people in my training, once they see that, they could never say they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
They can't say they didn't know there was another option out there. Um, the cliche, ignorance is bliss, is a horrible cliche because everybody recites it when in fact ignorance is expensive. So once we get rid of that and we realize what it really costs us, for example, one of my mantras is banks are not for storage, they're for transactions. When you store your money in the bank makes money on your money. They make way more than you do. They give you a paltry amount to thank you for giving them the money, and they took no risk except on your money. And guess what they're buying? Mortgage-backed securities. They're buying the stuff that we should be buying ourselves. So it's really silly. I always say, don't be mad at the bank once you learn this. Learn to become the bank.
Yes, become the bank. This is something that we talk about at the summit, and we talk about a lot at Keyspire. And I think you uncovered another illusion about money there that, in my experience, is one of the largest illusions, is the difference between the public and the private market. We talk about, I mean, if we even, the REIT is the best example. We're going to have a speaker on the main stage. It's going to show us the difference between what a private and a public real estate investment trust will do. And a little spoiler alert, the public real estate investment trust has nothing to do with real estate, has everything to do with the emotional roller coaster of the market. If there's a war around the world, if the president tweets something, if Elon Musk makes a new car, that private REIT changes in value, regardless of the incomes and all of the boring stuff, the incomes and the rents and the renovations. So the illusion about money is the public market and the private market. I think what people, no, I think I know what people don't realize is the public market, how little in control we are with the public market and how in control we can be with real estate. And Keyspire, our mission, our purpose is to put people in control of their future. That's not to say that part of their portfolio is not the public market. We teach people, been teaching people the private real estate dial for a decade. This is to help them understand how much of their money should be in private and how much should be in public. And that's the aha moment I see, Stephen. When I teach them the private real estate dial, they realized all of their money was in the public market, and then they dial it into the private market a little bit, not everything, a little bit, and how much their return, their income, their revenue, their lifestyle, their profit, everything changes when you start to dial it in. But the one thing I've noticed that really attracts people to the public market, and so if this is you, listen up, is the liquidity. Liquidity means access to capital. So people seem to feel more secure, safer, less risky if they know that they could get their cash, their investment, their money back within a day or a week or so. So, the challenge I get to people, would you rather have your cash back on demand, or would you rather make twice the return? What's more important to you? Making income, making revenue, growing your investment in the future, or having that money right away? And if it's having the money right away, then you have to have part of your investment in more of a short-term investment. Of course, at Keyspire and at the summit, we've got private lending, we've got private equity, we've got real estate, all things that can be more liquid than a multi-year investment. So that's a second illusion about money I wrote down. I don't know if that's on your list, but the public market, important one. Are you going to talk a little bit about the public and private markets?
Yes, absolutely. It's part of, everybody has to be aware. Nothing lives in this by itself. To say that all the money should be in one place, like you just said, is not a great idea. But we will show, and I'm going to show people, for example, how they can diversify within real estate, how they can diversify outside of real estate with a focus on real estate and how they want to be. See, one of the illusions, Michael, and this is huge. And it's hard for me sometimes to get this to penetrate people until they experience it firsthand. They seem to think that being a real estate investor is like another job. Like, I've got to spend all this time. I got to spend 10, 20, 30, 40 hours a week doing this like a side hustle. Well, first of all, real estate has never been a side hustle, nor should it ever be a side hustle. A side hustle is a side hustle. Chances are it won't make you a ton of money. Real estate is stability. Now, what people have a hard time understanding is that real estate, at least the way we do it, you and I, it's designed to fit into their very busy life. It's not to take over their very bit. We know, you and I know, we know how busy we are. We know how busy people are. They've got children, they've got families, they've got, maybe they're in school, maybe they've got a busy job, maybe they got two jobs, maybe they got a hobby. How do we fit real estate neatly into their life so they can have it all? We're great believers, you and I, we've talked about this many times. Why can't you have it all? Why do people have to think, oh, it's one or the other or whatever? Speaking for myself, in my earlier days, I spent a little bit more time because I was flipping properties for other investors. Today, people kind of do that for me. So all of a sudden, I've got, I don't have to invest the same amount of time, but it's not a job. And I think that's really important. It's something that everybody should be doing. Investing is something people should be doing to generate wealth now, over time, and in the future. And it should generate them in those three components. They need some instant cash or instant money, so quicker cash, not get rich quick. They need money over time, and they need money for the future. So if we can generate that three-way payday so that everybody takes advantage of, and adjusting accordingly, they really can have it all.
That's great. I'm really excited to see your session and to have other people see it as well. Last question. You've often said money has to, or withers and dies. What do you mean by that?
Well, I get a little silly about that thought. Everything has movement. I just remember people saying, as a human being, if you don't move, you wither and die. As you're getting older, as you have aches and pains, they say you have to move. And if you stay stagnant, you're going to get all seized up, and you're not lubricating your body and stuff like that. And then I started thinking, what else moves or it dies? Well, an electrical current, when it's moving, it generates electricity. When it doesn't, it does nothing. The current in the water, when it's stagnant, it's a breeding ground for bacteria. But when it's moving, it's usually fresher and cleaner and safer to drink. And then one day I got to thinking about this. Is it possible that money's other word is currency? And is it possible that currency comes from the word current or the word flow? And maybe there's a secret in there somewhere for those of us that love words to say that our money has to flow or it dies. So it really comes back to what I said at the very beginning when you asked me the opening question. If our money's sitting in a bank account doing absolutely nothing and dies, it loses value. It's got to be put into something moving for it to actually be able to grow. So my mantra of money moves or it dies is just the analogy and the metaphor of think about all things that if they don't move, they kind of die a slow, painful death. Maybe a
I
little
love
dark,
that.
but
Currency. That's great. Stephen, thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to the Investor Summit. You got to go see Stephen. He is going to change your mindset and open some doors, pull back the curtain about money and the illusions around money. There's going to be retirement. If you're younger and you haven't thought about retirement, you got to see Stephen to set it up properly. And if you're older and you're thinking about retirement, this is a must have, a must not miss session on the workshop stage. Just seeing you all at the Investor Summit. You'll be getting the schedule closer to the event, so you'll know when and where Stephen will be speaking. Stephen, thank you for joining me today.
oh, it's my pleasure, Michael. I love talking about this. But more importantly, I love when people go out and start to apply it in the real world for real.
Well, we're going to have a lot of people there in your workshop room that you're going to be able to guide and be able to help moving forward. Thank you. I'll see you soon. I'll see you at the summit in just a couple of weeks. Oh my goodness, it's coming up. All right,
Thanks,
have a great
Michael.
afternoon.
You too.